president is going so far in the direction of direct government ownership of banks, direct government ownership of the auto companies, that I think there will be a backlash, and it could be a good year. And people ask me if I did win the nomination, what would I say about the Democrat opponents is I really think they're going to have to defend Obama, and it can be a campaign about President Obama in 2010. And while he does have high popularity rolls, in Kentucky, he lost overwhelmingly to John McCain, and John McCain ran sort of a lackluster campaign, but he still wiped out President Obama in Kentucky. So Kentucky is rife, I think, for talking about the fact that we can't go along this road. We cannot continue to sustain this massive deficit.
90% chance you're going to run? I mean, what do you need to see in your exploratory committee to ensure that you do run?
There's a couple of things going on. It's kind of a tricky situation. We have an incumbent senator, Jim Bunning, who actually did vote against the bank bailout and has been fairly conservative. He unfortunately did vote for some other things that we have a great disagreement with, such as the Patriot Act, but he in general was kind of conservative. He says he's running, but at the same time he says if he doesn't raise enough money, he won't run. He also has encouraged another candidate other than myself to form an exploratory committee, which doesn't seem to make sense, because if he's really running, why would he encourage other people to compete with him for fundraising if that's the key criteria for him to keep running?
Well, I don't care if he's got a half good... I mean, Dr. Paul, to interrupt here, I don't care if he's got a few good things on his record. A bunch of it's bad. Your dad isn't going to live forever. We need to use the Paul name for liberty, and we need you to go ahead and get into politics and go ahead and start winning to follow in your father's footsteps.
And I think that's sort of the question, and some of it will be shown by what we can raise through the exploratory committee. I was telling you earlier, we plan on going to several different states. I'm working on coming to Texas in August, and we're hoping to actually get down in your neck of woods to Austin. And we know we have a lot of friends in the Austin area. The Austin area was one of the biggest meetup groups in the country, and we hope that the people of Texas will try to get us a new U.S. Senator in Kentucky.
The power of having a Paul in the House and a Paul in the Senate. And for folks that want to know your policies, your ideas, I've read your writings, I know your history with the Kentucky Taxpayers Association and what you've done. You're basically what I would call a chip off the old block. Your policies are basically identical to your father, correct?
I'd say we'd be very, very similar. We might present the message sometimes differently. You know, we have a website if people want to learn more about what I think, randpaul2010.com. And on that website, we already have a lot of policy issues, and a lot of them are very, very similar to my father. I will be my own person, and I think the message in some ways has to be broadened and made more appealing to the entire Republican electorate, because you have to win a primary. And not only that, it's, as I do believe, in a slightly different presentation. For example, on national defense, my father and I agree completely that you should declare war. You know, you should not fight war without declaring it constitutionally. But at the same time, I think it's important that we emphasize that the Constitution, one of the primary enumerated powers of the Constitution, was national defense. And so we do believe in a strong national defense. We just have to define what is in our best national defense. But once we do so, we need to appear and acknowledge that we do believe in a military response to those who attack us.
Sure. I mean, that's just a popular thing. But obviously, you would try to repeal the Patriot Act. You try to repeal unconstitutional gun laws. You try to defend the borders.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things that I spoke recently at the Knob Creek machine gun shootout in Kentucky, a pretty amazing thing. Over 3,000 people show up at this machine gun shootout, and I gave a speech there, and I said, look, I'm a great defender of the Second Amendment, but you know what? If you want the Second Amendment, you got to defend the First Amendment also. McCain-Feingold limits what Second Amendment groups can do, limits my taxpayer group from buying advertising. It's actually illegal for me to buy advertising within 60 days of the election under McCain-Feingold. So I tell them, if you want the Second Amendment, you want to defend the Second, you got to defend the First. And I said, if you want the Second Amendment, you want to be free from government intrusion and looking and snooping about what guns you have in your house, you've got to believe in the Fourth Amendment. So you can't have the Patriot Act, which eviscerated the Fourth Amendment, if you really want to be free in your home to be allowed to own guns for personal protection.
Yeah, give that website out again for folks.
It's randpaul2010.com.
And can folks go ahead and go to randpaul2010.com and donate?
They can. We have a donation. We have a ticker on the site, actually, and I was joking. I tell people we've got two really old political hacks out in California, age 24 and 25, evidence of the youth movement, who have done this website for me and have done a great job.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. So RandPaul2010.com. I got a lot of questions for you in the 10 minutes or so we have left with you, Dr. Rand Paul, son of Congressman Ron Paul. We have bills introduced in Congress that are just really off the chart. We have the bill to put everybody on a no-fly list, 1,100,000 Americans in this Kafkaesque system, no judge, no jury, no face your accuser, no more Second Amendment. That's racing through the House. We have the Cyberbullying Act being pushed by the character Hannah Montana, that if the feds if someone signs an affidavit saying something hurt their feelings, federal felony charges, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's no doubt Obama is making a tyrannical move that I have to say dwarfs Bush. I didn't think that was possible. What should we do about that from your view?
Well, I think we have to, work at sunsetting the Patriot Act or repealing the entire thing outright. I think one of the great ironies, and I actually kind of laughed to see what Jane Harman got caught up in. Here's a woman who went along with Bush on supporting all these wireless tapping, and then she gets caught up with her phone tapped. But it's not a laughing matter for the rest of us, because my wife and I were sitting this morning, and we're getting these random emails, and we don't know if it's just spam or not, but some of them are in either Arabic or Hebrew. We're not sure what language, but we were kind of laughing and saying, well, you know what, someone's probably sending us email. Now we'll get on a list, and now they can look at our email. Well, we laugh, but that could actually be true, that someone sends you a random email that's from another country with another language we don't even understand, but now they say, well, look, you're getting it from this person who's on a watch list. We're allowed to look at all of Rand Paul's email. And I don't know if that happens, but I know under the Patriot Act, they can do that.
No, that's exactly what they do, but they don't even do that anymore. They'll get whole terrorism investigations by just going up to somebody at a restaurant or bar and saying, think we might have to have a shooting war someday? Yeah, Bob, you do. Boom, they'll open a whole Spence account for, 10 or 15 feds to follow you around for 2 or 3 years. That's how they operate. So your instincts are right, Doctor.
Well, it's amazing, and it's not brand new either. If you look back at the history during World War I of what they did through the Sedition and Espionage Acts, there's a famous court case, and I think Napolitano writes about this in his book. It was a farmer out in Montana, and he goes down to the feed store with 2 or 3 of his buddies, and he says, well, I think this war is about a bunch of bankers getting rich in New York, and I don't care much about those Germans. Says this in World War II. They put him in jail. And the first judge that hears the case under the Espionage Act says, well, maybe we ought to use a little common sense here, and if it looks like he's going to be able to affect the outcome of the war by going down to the feed store and being against World War I, maybe that's a different story. And so
Stay there, Doctor. Final segment with Rand Paul. Admits that 90% or more of the people picked up at Guantanamo Bay and other camps in Europe were picked up by rival clans. And I had this former CIA section chief over Afghanistan on. He wrote the book Jawbreaker, and he admitted that they'd pay him $24,000 to $25,000, as high as $30,000 per head. And they'd mainly just grab 14, 15, 16-year-old goat herders who had no history because, they didn't want to grab somebody from a real, terror group because they'd come after them. And they would just sell them to the U.S. And they admit that most of the intelligence was gained through torture. So when they say they're going to release Al-Qaeda on the streets of America, no, Obama's talking about taking them to new camps in the U.S. with indefinite torture and having a new kangaroo court do it. So, and they're calling that liberal. Well, this is a scary precedent. Obama's saying he's going to continue indefinite detention, Rand Paul.
There's at least one prisoner down there that I've read about who was a former governor of a province in Afghanistan. He was a supporter of Karzai and a supporter of the U.S. government by all appearances, but then a rival clan who wanted to take over the governorship turned him in and said he was collaborating with the Taliban. But it's kind of unclear whether these people are guilty, not guilty, whether a rival clan wants to take their turf. And like we talked about, 90% of these people in Guantanamo